welcome. As Jeff said, my name is Cheryl Steinberg. I'm the director of the Justice and Aging Project at New Hampshire Legal Assistance, and I'm here with Judith Jones, who will speak after me, who also works for New Hampshire Legal Assistance with our Fair Housing Project, and also does some stuff with my project as well. And Amanda's going to be also speak a little bit about some of the services that she provides through the Family Justice Center. As I said, I work for the New Hampshire Legal Assistance Justice and Aging Project, and just so you're familiar with, I can explain to you what that is. It's a project that serves persons 60 years of age and older. We have no financial limitations as far as eligibility. And we focus on civil legal issues that affect older people. And some of the things that just New Hampshire Legal Assistance does in general, in which they serve low-income people, we help people with improper evictions or foreclosures, with improper terminations of public benefits, or just helping people become eligible for public benefits like Social Security, disability, or workers' comp, or unemployment compensation, things like that, and Judith will talk a little bit about that, Medicaid. We also have a domestic violence project where we help people that are victims of domestic violence, and then within the Justice and Aging Project, we focus on specific issues that primarily affect older people, such as what I'm going to be talking about, elder financial exploitation, and then residents' rights and long-term care facilities such as nursing homes and assisted living facilities, and also illegal and abusive debt collection practices, which that does affect more than just older people, but it seems to have a greater kind of emotional toll on people who are older because of the abusive practices some of these debt collectors take. But what I'm here today to talk about specifically is elder financial exploitation. And the reason why is it's a huge problem. There was estimated over 10 years ago that billions of dollars each year get taken from older people. This is across the country, and I think that's only grown since then, and you've heard about all the scams. We'll talk a little bit about that, but there's really, it also impacts, some of this exploitation involves family members and acquaintances who take advantage or, exploit the people that that the older person has in a position of trust, that they feel like they can trust, but meanwhile they violate that trust. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So what it is in the most basic terms, financial exploitation is the illegal or improper use of income or assets of an older person. So it's just taking advantage of either your income or your assets. As I said, we're already this. I don't know if you know this. New Hampshire is the second oldest state in the country. So we already have a very aging population, and it's projected to get even bigger. By the year 2025, people 65 and older is projected that population to double in New Hampshire. And so the more older people that we have, the more, unfortunately, opportunities there are to take advantage of those people, and that's why we're really concerned, and we want to make sure people have the tools that they need to try to prevent that from happening. It really, as I said, it can be done by strangers, and I know any of you already had like presentations on scams or heard about the scams, and that certainly is part of it, but then, as I said, there's also these things that people that we think we trust, unfortunately, can take advantage of you. And some of the things that, the way it can play out is people that forge your signature, right, without your permission. They can literally steal your money. They can somehow get access to your credit card information and start charging things on your credit card. You've heard of identity theft too. If they get your information, they can start opening an accounts and charging, then charge accounts and start charging things in your name. They can also just basically pressure you to give them money and things, right? That maybe you don't feel like you want to, but they just kind of make you feel guilty, and you somehow will give them the money. And one of the, and it does, it does affect people that are particularly vulnerable. So people that maybe are isolated in their homes and are, dependent on someone to take care of them, so it could be a caretaker that, sometimes the way it can play out is they'll say, if you don't give me this money, I might have to send you to the nursing home, or I might have to get a guardianship, or things like that. And that's when people get really scared, and they'll do things that maybe they think isn't really the right thing to do. Or sometimes people just have memory problems, and the person will just take advantage of them that way, and they're not going to even totally understand what's going on, right? So, and another big area which Judith is going to touch on a little bit about healthcare powers of attorney, and she can even talk a little bit more about regular powers of attorney. But do you guys know what those are? Does anybody want to take a guess what they think a power of attorney is, or no volunteers? Okay, well, okay, go ahead.
It's where you get representation.
Okay, so representation from a.
If you're not feeling too well.
If you're not feeling too well, yeah. Well, that's good. So basically, when I talk about a general power of attorney, it's basically an agreement that you make with someone, where you say, I'm going to let you take care of my business for me, right? And you lay out exactly what it is that you're going to let them do. And usually it's done very broadly. And the idea behind it is if you become to a place where you can't make your own decisions anymore, then this person can take over and do it for you, right? And the whole idea, though, is it's not giving this person a license to do whatever they want because of what they think that what they should, do for you. They're supposed to, as much as possible, step in your shoes and make decisions the way that they think you would want them made, right? And so I do think there's a confusion a lot of times when these powers of attorney get executed, that the person that the term is agent, so the person who has the authority to act on your behalf kind of thinks, well, I think it's best for my mom to, spend money on this or to do that. And it's like, no, unless that person really, the actual person whose the money it is, so the principal agrees with that, they shouldn't be doing that, right? But I think the other thing is this, is that once this power of attorney is executed, that the agent does have a lot of authority at that point to make a lot of business transactions, and if they have bad intent, that's when it can be abused, right? So you just need to, I don't want to scare you because I think they're really important things to have, and I think everybody should have one as long as you have someone you can really trust and make sure they're going to make the right decisions. But you also should be aware that they can be abused as well. And the reason why it's important to have one is because if you don't do it, right, and then let's say something happens and you can't make any decisions anymore, then the only option really is for someone to go to court and get a guardianship, right, to act on your behalf. And, if you can avoid doing that, that's certainly a better option. So, because you're retaining control over then of how you want people to, who you want to maintain and handle your business for you. So that's always a better way to go, as long as you have someone that you feel you can really trust to do that for you, okay? So as far as things that you can look out for, and so if you have people that you're close to and you're concerned that maybe they're being exploited, there's certain telltale signs. If someone who normally had plenty of money to pay their bills and everything else all of a sudden is, their electricity is getting shut off, or they don't have enough money for groceries or something like that, that's certainly a sign that something is going on, right? If all of a sudden they have this new friend that's going with them everywhere, right? And this friend is just kind of cutting them off from others, that's a sign that maybe that person's getting taken advantage of. If all of a sudden there's like excessive credit card charges on their statements, that's a sign. And just in general, a disparity between what their lifestyle used to be and what it is now, or poor hygiene, all those things. So if you notice signs from anybody that you know, that's something to keep in mind and think they might be getting exploited. And I think I've kind of touched on this before. So things that can increase the risk of being taken advantage of is someone who's vulnerable, who is someone that's at home, who maybe doesn't have a support system, and maybe depends on one person to take care of them, and therefore then they very are beholden to that person to help them, and they feel like they have to go along with whatever this person wants. Or there's the option. The other way is that we have a lot of these cases where there's an adult child who's dependent on the older person, the parent, and they're just kind of taking advantage of the parent, by living in the house and not paying rent, and not, kind of pulling their weight, and having unwelcome guests come over and so forth. So that's another way it happens. And then people, again, like I said, people who have some kind of cognitive, some kind of impairment, so memory issues or other physical impairments that really make them dependent, that certainly puts them at risk for things like that to happen. I have
a question.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Who has greater authority, the person that has power of attorney or a member of the family that does not have it, when you get to whether to sell the property or not?
Okay, so the question is, who has greater authority, the power of you mean the agent under the power of attorney or family member? The agent under the power of attorney, because it's a legal document that's been signed and it's valid.
Is it revocable?
It's revocable, yes. So that's the thing. As long as the person is who executed it, so the principal is still able to make decisions, they can revoke it at any time, yes.
Not able to make decisions.
Well, then that gets a little trickier. I mean, technically, if they're not under a guardianship, they can revoke it, but I think the other side is there could be a challenge that they didn't understand what they were doing. But really, there's nothing to stop them from just revoking it. Yeah. And okay. Do you have anything to add on that, Judith?
No, these
Okay.
are great.
Okay.
These are great questions.
Okay. So yeah.
Is guardian and power of attorney the same person, or is it two different jobs?
Oh, it's two, you really only need one or the other. So you would.
You can't have both?
There would be no reason to have both. I mean, unless you don't, because the power of attorney is somebody that would act on your behalf and can do things for you that legally, because you signed it. And the only reason you'd need a guardian is if is if the power of attorney wasn't able to, if the agent wasn't able to act on your behalf anymore. So I don't, unless there's, I guess we could put it this way, if there's also health care, so and Judith is going to talk about that, but so I'm talking about like general powers of attorney to handle your business, right? And so that's just for that. There's a separate whole document called an advance directive to help you make healthcare decisions. And with guardianships, it's the same kind of separation. So there's guardianship over the estate and guardianship over the person. And so I suppose there could be, I guess I'm kind of going back a little bit on what I'm saying, that there could be a situation where if you only had one kind of power of attorney, let's say over, a general power of attorney, but not a healthcare one, you might need a guardian over the person, if that makes sense. But usually it's people that have, just like have a regular power of attorney usually have a health care. It might be more the other way, that there's more people that have health care powers of attorney but not general ones. Yeah. Did you want, yep?
Yeah. What about a will?
A will, okay.
To go back to the
Well, a will is something that you do for for what happens when you die, right? So what a will does is it says, when I die, I want my property to go to, whoever you list, or, this is how I want it dispersed. So the will only kicks in once you're no longer living. By the same token, a power of attorney terminates immediately upon your death. So it's only good when you're alive. So you still need a will. You know, the will wouldn't, yeah, they're separate that way. Does that make sense? Okay. Because people do get confused about that. They think, oh, well, I had a power of attorney, so I can still do stuff after the person dies, and you can't. Yeah, yeah. That's when you get appointed an administrator to the estate, and that's who would, or an executor, and that's how you would handle that. Okay. Any other for now? Okay. So just, and Judith can answer even more questions about that, because she's got more even expertise. She has more expertise than I do. Not even more, because it's not like it's like the resident expert on that. Anyway, so just so you know, there is a criminal law that that does kick in for financial exploitation, and it wasn't always around. So about, I guess it's been now since 2015, so it's kind of getting up there. It used to go around saying it's a new law, but it isn't anymore. And really what it does is it says two different things. If someone uses undue influence, just really, to try to get someone to give over their money or so forth, they can be criminally prosecuted for that. And by the same token, if they take advantage, if they also if they abuse the power of attorney in an improper way. So if they either convince someone to sign a power of attorney improperly, and then that can be a crime, and and then use it in a way that they shouldn't. I will tell you, the Attorney General's office for the state of New Hampshire, they have an elder abuse and exploitation unit, and they do prosecute people, and they've done a lot of prosecutions. And by the same token, county attorneys as well, so like Stratford County Attorney, and I don't know, Amanda, you might even know some cases where they do prosecute people. That does happen, and that's a good thing, because it never used to happen before. And basically, these people would take advantage, right? And then there'd be no consequences whatsoever. So there at least are some consequences now criminally. I had a case where we started representing a gentleman over this relative trying to kick him out of the house, but there was this niece who was his power of attorney. It turned out the niece was taking all his money out of the bank and stealing it all, basically cash, withdrawing all kinds of money from the account. And the Attorney General's office prosecuted her, and she spent like 18 months in jail, or maybe even more than that. But anyway, she spent time in jail for that. So it happens, and they do it. So, which I think is a good thing. But in addition to criminal remedies, so we're not criminals. New Hampshire Legal Assistance engages in civil law, so that's things that aren't criminal. And so some of the ways we can help is if, let's say, someone, and this is a common scenario, that a parent might decide, I'm going to give my child the house, or I'm going to add them to the deed, because then, and they're going to promise to take care of me forever. That doesn't always work out, I got to tell you. Maybe it isn't always premeditated that they were out to take advantage from the beginning, but things happen, and the child's financial situation changes, and the next thing you know, they're like, okay, well, you got to move, because we can't afford this place anymore. We had a case just like that where the client gave the house to her son and daughter-in-law had no mortgage on the house. They didn't pay a penny for the house. Then the son and the daughter-in-law mortgaged the house up to the hilt because they spent all kinds of money. And then they said, well, you know what? We can't afford to live here anymore unless you give us some more money to pay the mortgage. And she couldn't, and she was already giving them money. So they said, well, we're selling the house, and you got to move. Right? So what we did is we went to court and we stopped the sale of the home, and then we were able to reach an agreement where she was able to stay there, and they moved out and paid the mortgage with the agreement that if she had to move out permanently to a nursing home or whatever, then that's when they could move back in, you know, so that was one way we helped. So we do things like that. We also help people. I'm helping some woman right now who is a victim of a romance scam, who has all kinds of credit card charges on her credit card that she didn't authorize, and trying to help her work through all that with the credit card companies and so forth. I mean, I will say this, with scams, it's pretty unlikely that we can get money back. I mean, maybe criminally they can do it, but once someone is a victim of a scam, like, have you heard about the grandparent scam, for example? Okay, so let's just say you're a victim of a grandparent scam. I mean, it's very unlikely you're ever going to get the money back, and that's the case with most of those kind of things. But if it's something with a family member, like the case I just explained, or some other acquaintance where it involves a home, or we have a case right now where the sister took money from the victim, and she owns property. So if that's the case, we can potentially get the money that way. So we try to do that. And our services are free. I don't think I clarified that before, so we don't charge at all for our services. So we can help in ways like that. So you should keep that in mind. And the last thing I'm just going to touch on really briefly is reporting. So in the state of New Hampshire, everyone and anyone who suspects there's some kind of exploitation, abuse, or neglect of what they call a vulnerable adult. So it isn't just even an older person. So a vulnerable adult is someone 18 years of age or older who you just think maybe has challenges taking care of themselves. You don't need to diagnose them or anything. So if you just suspect that someone is getting taken advantage of, right, you really are supposed to contact the New Hampshire Bureau of Elderly and Adult Services and report it, and then they will investigate. So, I would encourage you to do that. If you really are worried someone is getting taken advantage of, you should call. And I think maybe even Amanda, you could talk about that more, about how you can go about doing that. Because, if the person is isolated and no one's really watching out for them, that might be the only way that anybody's going to learn about it and they can get some help. So, and I've had situations like that where it's several years or more have passed while the person was taken advantage of, and it took a while to come to light. So the sooner we can know about it, the better. So that makes it that much easier to try to get some kind of a resolution on it. So I think, so you can call us. There is the Elder Abuse and Exploitation Unit of the Attorney General's Office, as I said, and the New Hampshire Bureau of Elderly and Adult Services that investigates these kinds of cases, and then we'll also refer it to the Attorney General's office if they think there's some kind of criminal activity. Yes?
Just one question. A person that has power of attorney, can they alter a revocable trust?
Yeah.
I can answer.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Do you want me to answer halfway through when I?
Yeah, I think Judith can answer it, but yeah, I think the answer is probably yes, but I'll let her answer. So in the meantime, what I wanted to do is I wanted to just briefly turn it over to Amanda, because she has some resources for you guys right here in Rochester, where if you are worried that you yourself are a victim or you know someone who is a victim, she can help you with that. So I'd like Amanda to take over.
Thank you. So I'm Amanda Vachon. I'm the director of the Stratford County Family Justice Center. So the Family Justice Center is just 2 doors down here. It's a county-based project that was started about 11 years ago, and it's intended to bring services together for victims of abuse. So that might be domestic violence or sexual violence, but it also can be abuse of someone who's an elder. So we offer services for things like financial exploitation or otherwise abuse. So it's not just necessarily like being physically harmed. It can be a whole array of things that we might be able to assist with. And so if you know a loved one or someone similar to what Cheryl was saying that is experiencing some of this stuff, or just something just doesn't seem right to you and you need to kind of bounce that off of someone else, you're more than welcome to call us and we'll talk you through it. We are a state where there's mandated reporting, so if there is something that is abusive going on, that Bureau of Elderly and Adult Services would be the place that we would report that to, but we would talk you through all of that. Those reports can be done anonymously too, so if you're fearful of your information being connected to a report like that, because it's a pretty sensitive topic sometimes, then we can talk to you about that. It's perfectly okay to report those things anonymously, but we are right down the walkway here, and everything that we provide is free, with the exception of certain different services that we might connect you with might have eligibility requirements based on what those are. But is it over 65? You're considered part of the
60.
Oh, 60, okay. So, I mean, the civil legal services are available to you at no cost through NHLA, and we can certainly help you apply for those things. We work closely with Haven, which is the crisis center for Stratford County, and so all of our client services are done by a trained advocate. So they understand the delicate nature of some of these things, and they're trained to talk you through some of it. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew that we were a resource for you, that we're right here in town. I brought along some flyers and things that I've picked up along the way. I sit on a committee with Cheryl that the Attorney General's office puts on regarding financial exploitation. So we often hear about different resources that might come up. The different scams are pretty intense these days, and unfortunately scammers are getting better and better about staying one step ahead of law enforcement. I don't know if have you guys all heard of the artificial intelligence news that's out there right now? Yeah. So one of the concerns is that they are able to mimic a loved one's voice. So when they call you, it really does sound like your loved one. And that's like very disturbing, because you're trying to take care of the people that you love in your life, and you've got this criminal on the other end of the line. So there are things that you can do to protect yourself from that, but knowledge is one of those things. That knowledge is power. So there's some information here that I'll leave for you. I think the number one thing I will say as someone who works in this field would just be that when something like that happens, that the best thing to do would be to stop and think, because it's that urgency that's how people get caught up in these things. So if you take a minute and think, if you hang up the phone and call your loved one, as opposed to engaging in this thing with someone that might be on the phone or via email, you may stop that scam in progress. So I just wanted to let you know that we're available. Please refer, friends and family if you feel like they might need support. And it's not just financial, like I said, it's other forms of abuse as well. So if there's other things going on, we're here to help. That's all.
Does that help? All right, so I'm going to have Judith come on now, and she's going to talk about some really exciting stuff too.
Hi, everybody. So this is the A+ crowd, I have to say, asking the intense questions. Oh, my gosh. So thanks all for coming out. And what I hope to do is build on what Cheryl said and what Amanda said. And what I love the most is, and Amanda said it, knowledge is power. And then she invited us to stop, think, and breathe. And so that, and then Cheryl elaborated on that, and then I thought about it, and I thought, well, that actually is a good way to live and is going to feed what we're going to talk about today. And the stopping and thinking, I just give an example, because I find in my career I've been helped most by my family, because they've dragged me through every horrible fact pattern there is. So I will use myself sometimes as an example. And I will say this: stop, think, and breathe. I know my father-in-law called me all in a panic. He said the IRS called him, and he owed money. So, right, so you all probably reacted better than I did, because what I find is when it's your family, you panic. That's the first thing you do, you panic. So the stop and breathe routine would be what we've all heard. The IRS doesn't call anyone. The IRS sends mean letters. They don't call. So, but there I was, because it was somebody you care about often, you panic, and I was like, oh my God, the IRS, like, what's happening? And then eventually, it's good. The more people say to me, stop and breathe, and knowledge is power, then I took a minute and said, oh, wait. But what I saw was, we can use, this is a professional term, it's called cuckoo. And so what I saw is how many seconds did it take me to get all riled up and then be on a train and then get myself out of it. And so anyway, what I find is all this stuff comes down to these bits of wisdom that both Cheryl and Amanda brought up, which is stop, think, and breathe through it. So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit. It seems like this group is really interested in powers of attorney and staying safe in your home. But I wanted to start by, there's all this knowledge sitting on the table. And what we have over there is a handout about New Hampshire legal assistance and how to get legal assistance. So what I find with these talks, I learn only visually. So I think the talks can be a little hard. So the good news is everything we've talked about is sitting on the table. So what you've got is how to access legal services. You have financial exploitation sitting on the table, a pamphlet about that. Also debt collection and harassment we have, what Amanda brought. And what I brought today, and I guess I knew it was going to be the A+ crowd here, that people who show up, usually like they're the studious ones, like we're going to get up and go out and we're going to learn. There's a paper that it's NHLA Resources. It's our link to all our pamphlets. I have a theory. I've looked at these pamphlets over the years, and more recently I've really thought, these are such good pamphlets. So if you, I say there, you too can become a lawyer if you were to read each of these topics. So just to give you an example, and Cheryl has developed many of these pamphlets. One I think that this group would like would be the Justice and Aging Question and Answer Manual. So all these questions about wills and trusts and powers of attorney in the question and answer material. It's common legal problems, question and answer. There's a pamphlet about choosing assisted living, property tax relief, fair housing, tenants' rights, nursing home transfer discharge, domestic violence, unemployment. So there's just this whole range of information. And for the folks not online, I will say what we've developed, other material we brought. We give 2 ways to access information, old-fashioned telephone, but this one is online, but we brought a lot of material. So for all the students in the room, this is one resource, and I made a handout about it because there's just so much there. Okay, so this crowd seemed interested in powers of attorney. So why don't we dive deeper into that, and then we'll pull in some of the other documents, like, well, what's a will and what's a trust? And then we asked about guardianship. So why don't we just unravel that a little bit and just give you a basis in your head. So when we hear powers of attorney, it can mean just about anything. Generally, we think what Cheryl talked about was this very broad, durable financial power of attorney. It can be very broad. It's finances. We have, on the other hand, one that's specifically for health care. If we look at the one for finances, it can be a general one, and whoever's drafting that, the general one, usually they want to make it as detailed as possible to pull in every fact pattern. So it would maybe have information in there about taking care of a pet, digital assets, post office boxes, businesses. It would be very, very, very broad if that's what you wanted. Compare that, let's say, what you might be used to if you're selling a home. Sometimes what you have is a limited power of attorney for finances. It just have to do with real estate transactions. But generally, what you're all talking about is a broad one, and the document, when you sign it, it is generally activated and could be a tool, as Cheryl said, that someone could use to really take your assets. So how do you protect yourself in that scenario? A little bit about the financial powers of attorney. Years ago, what attorneys did is they drafted two kinds. One, it was called an immediate, it's good now, and a springing. It sprang into action when you became disabled. And the part of me that thinks, well, we want to protect everybody, let's not get this agent having any power till the person's disabled. The springing one, it kind of fell out of favor because what was happening is, let's say it's me, for example, and it's my husband who's disabled, I'd go to the bank and I'd have to bring proof he was disabled. And the bank would say, well, that doctor's letter is old. That's 3 months old, get a new one. So you can see like you're pulling out your personal life everywhere. So that kind of fell out of favor. And more often now it's a springing document. Well, how do you protect yourself with that document? Well, one is you choose your agent carefully. And then the document, if you don't want it used, it's locked up. And it can be, if you work with an attorney, oftentimes the attorney keeps it. And they don't release it until you say it's okay, or there's a letter from your doctor saying you lack capacity. So getting back to choosing the agent, we'll talk about that with finances, but also it's interesting to talk about it with healthcare. So what we learn is, and I think talking about financial exploitation, it's almost like some of the family dynamics, when people get desperate, the family dynamics get ramped up. And it can bring out the worst in folks. And so when you're choosing an agent, you're choosing someone who's very trustworthy, who probably is good with numbers, and who's not afraid. And it doesn't have to be a family member. One other thing that we think about nowadays, though, is we might not have a person to pick. Right? So everybody's moving, or you might, you say, like for me, for example, I'm good to go as long as my husband's alive, but once he dies, I've got to think, okay, do I trust his nieces? Uh-oh, I don't know. Well, she's an accountant, I trust her, but what about that one? And I don't know them as well, so how do you choose? And if you're choosing kids, do you let everybody know what the plan is, and do you meet about it ahead? So oftentimes you're having to give some thought to who could be agent. When we look at the healthcare power of attorney, same kind of document, you're giving an agent power over healthcare decisions. Well, when does this document come into play? Healthcare. We said the financial one can come into play immediately if it's signed and signed by the agent. Keep it under lock and key, maybe keep it with an attorney. The healthcare has this whole different mechanism. Healthcare is, that document does not come into play until it's documented in your medical record that you don't have the ability to make knowing medical decisions. So you can, let's say, have a stroke. Not you. We won't make it you. We'll make it somebody else. I don't want to make it me. We'll make it somebody we don't know. This other person. They have a stroke. And they can't speak. So, in the hospital. So if they have a healthcare power of attorney, it would be activated. But in that example, with a stroke often, you can have someone who gets better in a few days. And like they couldn't speak, and now they're speaking. So that document can be activated for the moment. It's activated by doctor, physician's assistant, or nurse practitioner. Writing in the medical record needs to be activated. Person doesn't understand to make knowing medical decisions. But then it's what's called deactivated. And you're fine now. So what we like to prepare people for, and a lot of what you heard today was knowledge is power, ties into this too. Knowing a little bit about the documents, knowing that it can be activated and then deactivated. This other thing starts to happen as we age. So I have watched this with myself. Sometimes it can feel as though as you age, you disappear. I don't know whether, I say at some point my name became ma'am. And I started like, all right, my name's ma'am. All right. So I don't know whether anybody's felt that. I hope not. If you haven't, I'm happy for you. I have just sort of felt like, oh, people maybe, I go somewhere, they make assumptions about me. So we're going back to taking back your power. And one thing I've noticed over the years, including with my own family, is that as my family members aged in the medical setting, often I would go just to listen and I'll take notes. But what would happen is no one was looking, everybody was looking at me and no one was looking at, let's say, my mother. And then I would have to say, no, I'm not the patient, you have to talk, you have to talk to her. And I think it's because everybody's under pressure, everybody's moving quickly. They think I can talk quicker, which in that case I could talk quicker than my mother. But I'm like, no, she's going to talk, you're going to hear what she has to say. So when you're thinking about these documents, the same theme applies. Knowledge is power, understanding a little bit of them. And then with the healthcare power of attorney, it's a good example. It forces you, the document, you're naming an agent, but what else is in there? It's a time to think about if you were near death or permanently unconscious, what would you like for medical treatment? And I would say we have two kinds of people. We have people who are not going to die. That was my father-in-law. He was 95 and he saw no need to get a burial plan. It's too soon. No need. That was a story. Then we had folks on the other end, more like my mother, who wanted to talk about it every day. And that was, remember, if I'm on my way out, I don't want the tubes, I don't want it. And I'd be like, I remember. Can't we just have lunch? Do we have to say? However, I will tell you, if I had to choose between my father-in-law and my mother, I would choose my mother. Because when she got ill, and she was in Hyder House, I'd like to say with Stratford County, I've had experience in each of the departments, including Hyder House. But the prison, it was just a visiting somebody. So anyway, back to the power of attorney. I decided it was better to be the one for the agent, I was the agent, to have the one who wanted to talk about it every day. Because going back to how we started this talk, when this all starts, you can think you know a lot. Like I could think I know a lot about this. I should know a lot. I'm talking to people about it. But what happens when you're in the moment? I will tell you from personal experience, panic. Panic and sadness and those feelings bring out the best and worst in all of us. So I liked it better. She told me what she wanted. So as she was leaving, I had her voice in my head. So that is an invitation to everybody thinking about, have you thought about what you would want if you were near death or permanently unconscious? Has anybody thought about it? Mm-hmm. Yay. The next invitation is, if you know what you want and you feel strongly about what you want, the best protection is not only having the documents, and we'll tell you in the pamphlets we have, tell you how to get the documents, but to talk to family members or nosy people who would interfere. May not be family members. So do we all have those? So I thought I was pretty lucky with my mom because my brother was far away, and I thought this, good. First I was like, oh, poor me, I'm doing everything, and then I was like, oh, nobody to fight with, this is good. And then my neighbors started giving me advice, and I was like, oh my goodness, stop it. So what I decided was, these issues we tend to avoid. Some people jump right in, but you may jump right in and then have family members say, I don't want to talk about it. No, we're not going to talk about that. But how do you get what you want? One is thinking about it, learning about it, and then it's guiding those people who may be problems. Like with if it's family, for example. My example usually is, we'll give the example of a daughter who's nearby, and I'm stereotyping, who is right on it and knows what her mom wants. And then you have maybe a sibling further away. And the sibling swoops in right, near the end of mom's life, but hasn't watched this and can't. They're like, oh no, stop it! Nope, mom's not leaving. So it is having the notion of what do I want? Who should know about it? Who might interfere? Who's going to hear about this in your voice? And maybe it's a group phone call. Maybe it's a really fun holiday dinner. We're going to talk about death and dying. If you want dessert, you have to sit through this. So it's if you have worries, who could do what and who's going to do what? What about them hearing about it in your own voice? Well, for financial power of attorney, I didn't choose you because I know you can't balance your own checkbook. I chose Jim. So you're just like saying your truth, and that's kind of okay. We have more of a possibility of getting what we want. So I promised to answer the question about irrevocable trust and powers of attorney. So New Hampshire law now, if you want your agent under your financial power of attorney to be able to amend a trust, it has to be in the financial power of attorney and it has to be in the trust. It has to be in both places. If often your financial power of attorney is your successor trustee under the trust often. So we have a document, a trust, usually they're here while we're alive. And then when you die, they become irrevocable. It's an option to a will. It says who gets what when I die. So I might have this living trust. It breathes with me. It's mine. I'm the trustee. And then as I age, it's going to say, oh, we want a successor trustee. Judith, not making sense these days. Who's going to be the trustee if she can't? And the document itself is going to give the terms of who can revoke it or amend it. It's my trust. I'm going to be able to. You may or may not give the successor trustee power to amend. And if you want an agent under a financial power of attorney to do anything, it has to be in both documents. So there's usually the advice is if you have any documents, read them every 3 years. And take a peek at what you have and know what you have. So how to get the documents? The good news is that healthcare power of attorney documents are available at any hospital. And
Now, is that perceived differently if you have an irrevocable?
An irrevocable trust, you're always looking to the terms of the trust. What does the trust itself say? And typically, by the term irrevocable, generally you're implying nobody can change this thing. But you're always looking to the terms of the trust to ask, what does the trust say? Who has the power? When? And who can do what? So you're just reading the trust. Oh, you have the power. Well, if it's not you, is it somebody else? When do they have the power? So each document is so different. Really hard to make generalizations. Yeah. So
Can you change that without it costing you money?
No.
That's the hard part, right there.
But if we're, I shop at Goodwill. So what we do have in the pamphlets are, you need a healthcare power of attorney and you want to change it and update it. You can do that by going to the hospital, getting a copy. You need 2 witnesses, and the witnesses can't be the person who's acting as an agent or a healthcare provider who's providing care. So you can get those, and they're at a hospital or they're online from New Hampshire Foundation for Healthy Communities. They have a book that explains them. And if you're interested in financial powers of attorneys in the information, we've got a link to read more about it. And then if you may qualify for a pro bono, if you're low asset and low income, a pro bono attorney for that document, or a will, and all the numbers are set up. If you're looking at amending a trust, I'd say there's no way to. One way you can save money on it is read about it ahead and know what you want. Okay, all right. So yeah, no, you'd have to pay through the nose. Oh. Oh, yeah.
I don't know how prevalent it is, but there was a time where, and there's one particular law firm in New Hampshire that pitches this whole thing about doing irrevocable trust so that you don't have to give your money to the state if you have to go on Medicaid. And I would just really caution you about potentially doing that, because, as Judith says, it's something that you can't change once it's irrevocable, and you might end up really regretting the decision to do that. There's other ways you can preserve your assets other than doing this irrevocable trust.
So
Yeah.
the big pitch was,
Yeah.
save your house for your kids,
Yep.
save your house for your kids, save your house for your kids. But life has changed. Kids are not around. And now the house often is your biggest asset. And you may need the house to pay for care. I want to go to assisted living, and that's expensive. Or I want to, like, Rochester is too cold. I need to go somewhere warmer. So I go back to my family. My mom said to me, I want you to have the house. And I said, I don't want it. And then I said, it's too late. And then she said, no, I heard on the radio you can do this. And I thought, what does she think I do for a living? I don't know. So we go back again to the vulnerability. She would listen to the radio, and whatever was on the radio, a certain station she believed. And I said, no, it's too late, no. And as it turned out, she needed to sell the house and use the money. She moved to an independent apartment, and she needed the cash to do that. So we were really worried giving away the house, locking it down. What if you need it? And a lot of people, what I saw for cases is a lot of people trying to undo those. So it is what Amanda said, knowledge is power. Stop, breathe, and think before you sign anything.
Well, thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it. Please take all these materials.
Yeah.